She only wanted to admire something beautiful. But what happened inside that luxury store shocked even the most powerful. The Montero Jewelry Story. The Montero Jewelry Store stood out on Oak Avenue like a jewel itself. Among sophisticated boutiques and exclusive cafes, its minimalist glass and steel facade attracted curious glances and well-filled wallets. The interior, a sanctuary of calculated elegance, displayed unique pieces under lights that enhanced every facet of the diamonds and precious stones. The Italian marble that covered the floor reflected privileged silhouettes like a crystal-clear pond. Patricia Adams managed that small empire with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. At 42, brown hair always impeccable in a severe bun and tailored suits, she prided herself on maintaining what she called the Montero standard. Her motto was simple: exclusivity is not just a concept, it's a daily practice. In reality, this meant rigorous filtering of who could or could not enter that space. It was a stifling Saturday afternoon in Chicago, when the summer heat seemed to melt the asphalt. The movement in the store was beginning to diminish, and Patricia observed with satisfaction the day's sales figures. Her tablet displayed ascending graphs that made her smile discreetly. "Another productive day," she commented to Richard Almont, a young 28-year-old salesman who had stood out in recent months for his ability to convince undecided clients. "Mr. Taylor took that set of emeralds that had been in the display for just 2 weeks. Guaranteed commission for you." Richard smiled, adjusting the navy blue tie that perfectly matched his Italian suit. It was an interesting negotiation. His wife was resistant, but when I mentioned that actress Marilyn Crawford wore similar pieces at the last film festival, the resistance disappeared. "That's why you're standing out, Richard. You know how to push the right buttons." Patricia paused and looked around with an expression of satisfaction. "Look at this. Elegant silence, air conditioning at the perfect temperature, subtle aromas, and only people who really should be here." Across the street, unaware of the conversation taking place inside the jewelry store, a small figure watched the main display window attentively. Lily Smith, with her barely completed 10 years, curly hair tied in an improvised bun and bare feet that knew every inch of Chicago's asphalt, contemplated the shine emanating from the other side of the glass with genuine fascination. She had spent the morning collecting cans around the Gold Coast neighborhood, a job her Aunt Judy had taught her to guarantee lunch, as she used to say. The plastic bag tied to her waist was already heavy, but her gaze showed no tiredness, only a childlike curiosity that had not yet been suffocated by the hardness of life. What captured Lily's attention was not the most expensive piece or the most eye-catching. It was a simple silver necklace with a small star-shaped pendant. There was something about that specific object that completely hypnotized her, as if that star held some secret or memory that she couldn't fully access. "It looks like the star from the story," she murmured to herself, recalling the tales her mother used to tell her before disappearing 3 years ago. "The star that guides you home." Inside the jewelry store, Jennifer Summers, one of the youngest saleswomen, was the first to notice the girl's presence on the other side of the window. At 24, and only 8 months after being hired, she had not yet completely absorbed Patricia's exclusivist philosophy. "There's a little girl who's been looking at the Polaris necklace for about 10 minutes, she commented, uncertain whether she should mention the fact. Patricia raised her eyes from her tablet and followed Jennifer's gaze, her face immediately closed in an expression of disapproval. "This again. The street security is getting worse and worse. Philip," she discreetly called one of the security guards, "keep an eye on the door if she tries to enter." Philip nodded without needing to hear the rest. He already knew the procedure. Richard gave a discreet chuckle, taking out his phone to photograph the scene. "Material for the team group. Did you see her face? Looks like she's never seen jewelry in her life." "She probably never has," Jennifer responded in a low voice, receiving a stern look from Patricia. At that exact moment, while tension grew inside the store, a man entered silently. Of medium height, well-trimmed grey hair, and a dark suit with no apparent brand, he purposely didn't draw attention. He was the type of person who could go unnoticed even in such a controlled environment. "Good afternoon," he greeted with a calm voice, receiving automatic responses from the team. who quickly returned their attention to the girl on the sidewalk. The man walked slowly to one of the side displays, apparently interested in white gold cufflinks. But his attentive eyes, behind discreet frame glasses, didn't miss a single movement in the environment. Lily outside finally gathered courage. Something about the star necklace called to her in an almost magnetic way. She took a deep breath, adjusted the bag of cans so it wouldn't make noise, and gently pushed the tempered glass door. The air conditioning hit her face like a refreshing wave, contrasting with the suffocating heat of the street. The subtle aroma of expensive perfume and noble wood invaded her nostrils. For a moment she stood still, absorbing that new atmosphere so different from the world she was used to. The discreet bell on the door announced her entrance, and all eyes converged on her at the same time. The silence that settled had weight, density. Lily felt each look as a judgment, but her determination to see the necklace up close was greater than her discomfort. Patricia exchanged a quick look with Philip, who strategically positioned himself near the door. Richard kept his phone in his pocket, but his finger remained on it, ready to record any unusual movement. Jennifer bit her lower lip, visibly uncomfortable with the situation. The man in the dark suit remained motionless, just observing. Lily walked slowly to the display where the necklace with the star pendant was. Her steps were cautious, as if stepping on a minefield. She kept her hands behind her back, instinctively demonstrating that she didn't intend to touch anything. Upon reaching the display, her eyes lit up. Up close, the necklace was even more beautiful. The silver star had small details that weren't visible from outside, and a shine that seemed almost magical under the strategically positioned lights. Can I see that one?" she asked, in an almost inaudible voice, pointing to the necklace. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia adjusted her posture and walked with firm steps to where the girl was. Her high heel marked an intimidating rhythm on the polished marble. As she approached, she didn't bend down to be at the child's height, preferring to maintain her position of superiority. "This is the Polaris necklace from the Celestial Collection, valued at $8,000, she said in a professorial and cold tone. "We don't do demonstrations without purchase interest." Lily gulped, but didn't back down. There was something about that necklace that prevented her from simply turning around. "It's just that it looks a lot like—" "Moreover," Patricia interrupted her, slightly raising her voice so everyone in the store could hear, "our service policy requires accompaniment by guardians for minors." The man in the dark suit took a few steps toward the scene, still maintaining a discreet distance. In Lily's pocket, a small object weighed like lead, something she had carried for 3 years, since her mother had left without explanation, leaving her in the care of Aunt Judy, who could barely take care of herself. The silent confrontation between stark poverty and ostentatious luxury created an almost palpable tension in the refrigerated air of the jewelry store. It was a contrast that bothered everyone, except perhaps Lily herself, whose innocence still didn't fully understand the invisible barriers that money erected between people. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And give a like. Tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll continue. Patricia crossed her arms, her posture now completely aimed at intimidating the small visitor. Her eyes, cold as the crystal display, measured Lily from top to bottom with barely disguised contempt. "Perhaps you didn't understand, dear," she continued with false sweetness. "This is not a store for everyone. Our products are exclusive, and our service is reserved for clients who can actually afford them." Lily lowered her eyes to her bare feet, suddenly conscious of the marks the hot asphalt had left on her skin. The bag of cans at her waist now seemed to weigh tons. "I just wanted to see it up close," she murmured almost inaudibly. "It looks like my mum's star." The comment, so simple and honest, provoked diverse reactions in those present. Richard rolled, his eyes impatiently typing quickly on the phone he kept semi-hidden. "Soap opera scene at Montero today. The needy child and the magical necklace," he sent to the team's WhatsApp group, accompanied by laughing emojis. Jennifer, on the other hand, felt a pang of compassion that fought against her fear of displeasing Patricia. She took a hesitant step forward, but retreated when she saw her boss's cutting gaze. Philip, the security guard, approached more, strategically positioning himself beside Lily, his muscular presence functioning as a silent reminder that she was not welcome. "Your mother must be looking for you," Patricia spoke with a tense smile. "Why don't you go back to where she's waiting?" It was then that Lily, with surprising courage, for someone of her age and size, removed from her pocket a small object wrapped in a piece of worn fabric. Her small and dirty hands unwrapped the package with almost reverential care, revealing half of a silver pendant, also in the shape of a star, identical to the one in the display, but broken. "My mother isn't waiting for me anywhere," she responded, with a dignity that contrasted with her fragile appearance. "She left 3 years ago. She only left this with me." The silence that followed was so dense it could be cut with a knife. Patricia blinked several times, visibly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. Other clients in the store now observed the scene without disguise, some with expressions of discomfort, others with morbid curiosity. "That doesn't change anything," Patricia finally declared, recovering her composure. "This establishment is not a museum. If you can't buy, you shouldn't be here." Her tone had now lost any pretense of cordiality. "Philip, please escort our visitor to the exit." The security guard stepped forward, placing a firm, though not violent, hand on Lily's shoulder. The girl instinctively shrank, like someone accustomed to receiving more rejection than kindness. It was at this moment that the man in the dark suit finally approached. Until then, he had remained a mere observer, but something in the scene, perhaps Lily's silent dignity in the face of humiliation, or Patricia's calculated coldness, seemed to provoke a change in his attitude. "One moment, please." His voice was low, but carried a natural authority that made everyone turn to him. Patricia immediately adjusted her expression to a professional smile. "Can I help you, sir? I apologize for this small inconvenience. We're just maintaining the appropriate environment for our clients." The man completely ignored Patricia, addressing Lily directly. "May I see what you have there?" The girl hesitated, looking distrustfully at the well-dressed stranger. Years on the streets had taught her to be cautious, but there was something in that man's eyes, a genuine kindness perhaps, that made her extend her hand with the half of the star pendant. He examined the piece carefully, turning it between his fingers. His eyes narrowed slightly upon noticing a small inscription on the back. "Interesting," he murmured, returning the fragment to Lily. "And you say your mother left this with you?" Lily nodded, putting the precious fragment back in her pocket. "Before she left. She said one day I would find the other half, and then I would know the way back home." The man looked at the display where the Polaris necklace was. "And you think this is the necklace that completes yours?" "I don't know," Lily admitted honestly. "But it looks very much like it. The star has the same shape and the same little lines at the tip. I had never seen another one like it." Patricia, visibly impatient with that interaction, interrupted. "Sir, if you're interested in a specific piece, I'll be happy to assist you. As for this situation," she vaguely gestured in Lily's direction, "we're resolving it." The man turned, slowly to Patricia, and something in his gaze made her involuntarily take a step back. "I am very interested in this necklace, actually," he responded calmly. "Could you remove it from the display so I can examine it more closely?" Patricia hesitated for a second, but the prospect of an expensive sale overcame her discomfort. With a gesture, she instructed Jennifer to open the display and remove the necklace. Jennifer did so with slightly trembling hands, delivering the piece to Patricia, who extended it to the man with an artificial smile. He took the necklace delicately, examining it with attention. He turned the star pendant, revealing a small inscription identical to the one that was on Lily's fragment. So a subtle smile formed on his face. "You have good eyes, Lily," he commented, surprising everyone by knowing the girl's name, which she hadn't mentioned. "This really seems to be the complement to yours." Confused looks crossed the store. Richard, who had stopped typing on his phone, observed the scene with growing discomfort. Something in the way the man behaved, the familiarity with which he treated the situation, the knowledge of the girl's name, began to arouse suspicions. "How do you know my name?" Lily asked, verbalizing everyone's thought. The man smiled. Let's say I know many stories about stars that guide people home. He turned to Patricia. I'll take this necklace. Patricia quickly resumed her professional posture. Excellent choice, sir. It's a piece from our exclusive celestial collection. Designed by the very David Montero, the man completed. I know, I designed it almost 20 years ago. A stunned silence took over the store. Patricia visibly paled, her lips opening in a perfect O of shock. Richard froze with his phone still in his hand. Jennifer brought her hands to her mouth, and Philip, the security guard, took a step back, as if wanting to disappear. Mr. Montero, Patricia finally managed to articulate, her voice now trembling slightly. We weren't expecting your visit today. If we had known... That's precisely the point, isn't it, Patricia? David Montero responded calmly. Unannounced visits show us the true face of things. Lily looked from one to the other without completely understanding what was happening, but feeling that something significant had changed in the store's dynamics. Lily? David turned to the girl again. You said your mother left 3 years ago. Can you tell me her name? Helen Smith, Lily answered, clutching the star fragment in her pocket like a talisman. She worked cleaning houses in the neighborhood. One day, she left me with my Aunt Judy and said she would return soon, but she never came back. A flash of recognition crossed David's eyes, so quick that only the most attentive would have noticed. And since then you've been living with your aunt? Lily nodded hesitantly. More or less. Aunt Judy isn't always... Well, sometimes I stay, with neighbors or... She gestured vaguely without completing the phrase, but everyone understood that many nights were spent on the streets. Patricia, trying to regain some control of the situation, forced a smile. Mr. Montero, this is a touching case, no doubt, but perhaps we could discuss it in my office away from other clients? David completely ignored her, maintaining his attention on Lily. You collect cans to help your aunt? To buy food, Lily corrected simply. Aunt Judy sometimes forgets. The raw sincerity of the response seemed to affect even Richard, who discreetly put his phone in his pocket, his face now a mask of discomfort. David Montero stood up, the Polaris necklace still in his hand. I'd like to make some changes today, he announced, his calm voice carrying a weight of indisputable authority. Patricia, Richard, could you accompany me to the office? Jennifer, please bring a glass of water and something for Lily to eat. While Patricia and Richard followed David toward the back of the store, with expressions that mixed confusion and fear, Jennifer quickly went in search of what was requested. The other clients and employees remained in a tense silence, feeling they were witnessing something significant, although they didn't yet completely understand what was to come. Lily remained alone in the center of the store, firmly holding the star fragment in her pocket, while a strange and almost forgotten feeling began to grow in her chest, something that looked very much like hope. What no one noticed was the gleam in David's eyes as he examined the inscription on the back of the star pendant. A single word, almost erased by time but still legible: believe. Patricia's office, with its light grey walls and minimalist furniture, now seemed too small to contain the tension that hung in the air. David Montero remained standing, the Polaris necklace still in his hands, while Patricia and Richard remained uncomfortably close to the door, like someone waiting for permission to sit. 17 years, David began, his voice calm, almost contemplative. 17 years building a brand that represents not just luxury but values, dignity, respect. He placed the necklace on the glass table with care. I grew up in Bronzeville. Did you know that, Patricia? The manager swallowed hard. No, Mr. Montero, I didn't. Of course not, he interrupted her softly. Because it's not in the marketing materials. It's not part of the official Montero jewelry story. The boy who sold candy at traffic lights and who today commands one of the largest jewelry stores in the country doesn't match the image you try to convey here, does it? Richard moved uncomfortably, avoiding looking directly at David. Mr. Montero, Patricia tried again, nervously adjusting her blazer. I can assure you that what you witnessed was just a misunderstanding. We have security protocols that need to be followed, and... Show me in the company manual. David interrupted her again, now with a firmer tone. Where it says we should humiliate children. Show me where it's written that someone who can't buy doesn't deserve to be treated with dignity. The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Patricia opened her mouth and closed it several times, unable to formulate an adequate response. "And you, Richard?" David turned his attention to the young salesman, who now seemed smaller than he really was. "I found your behavior particularly interesting. The phone in the company group, what was it again, soap opera scene?" Richard's face paled. "How did you—" "Our marketing intern, Luke, is in the same group," David explained calmly. "He had the good sense to send me screenshots as soon as he realized who I was. Quite revealing, I must say." Outside the office, in the main area of the store, Lily was sitting in one of the leather armchairs destined for VIP clients. Jennifer had brought a glass of water and a sandwich from the nearby cafe, which the girl ate with the calculated slowness of someone who doesn't know when the next meal will be. "Is he really the owner?" Lily asked Jennifer, who remained nearby, still nervous about the events. "Yes," Jennifer answered in a low voice. "David Montero. He rarely visits the stores personally. Nobody knew he would come today." Lily looked at the corridor that led to the office. "Are they in trouble because of me?" Jennifer hesitated, not knowing how to respond to the child's direct question. "It's not your fault," she finally said. "It's just that some people forget what really matters." Inside the office, David removed 2 envelopes from the inside pocket of his suit and placed them on the table. "Patricia Adams, Richard Almont," he spoke with formality. "You are officially dismissed from Montero Jewelry, effective immediately. The details of your terminations are in these envelopes, including the legal payments due. I ask that you collect your personal belongings and leave the store in the next 30 minutes. Patricia gasped, as if she had been slapped. "Mr. Montero, this is completely disproportionate. I've worked in this company for 12 years, always meeting goals, increasing profits, and creating a toxic culture that goes against everything this brand should represent," David completed firmly. "Your impressive goals don't compensate for the damage you've caused to our reputation and values." Richard, younger and less entrenched, in his position, seemed just stunned, as if he still didn't completely understand what was happening. "As for you, Richard," David continued, "I sincerely hope you use this experience to reflect on the type of person you want to be. You're young, you have potential. Don't waste it becoming someone who laughs at others' dignity." David opened the office door and gestured for both to leave. Patricia grabbed her envelope with fingers trembling with anger, while Richard took his almost mechanically, still in a state of shock. In the main area of the store, employees and clients observed the scene without disguising their curiosity. Patricia left first, head held high in a last gesture of pride, but with eyes shining with humiliation. Richard followed her head down, avoiding looking at anyone. David waited for both to head to their respective desks to collect their belongings, then walked to where Lily was sitting. The girl had finished the sandwich and observed everything with attentive and distrustful eyes, like someone accustomed to seeing the worst in people. "Lily," David sat next to her, maintaining a respectful distance. "You said your mother's name. I was Helen Smith, correct?" The girl nodded, instinctively clutching the star fragment in her pocket. "And she worked as a house cleaner here in Gold Coast?" "Yes," Lily confirmed. "She cleaned big houses. Sometimes she took me along when she had no one to leave me with." David was silent for a few moments, as if organizing complex thoughts. "Lily, would you mind showing me your piece of star again?" Carefully, Lily removed the small object from her pocket and handed it to David. He examined it once more, now with even more attention, his fingers delicately tracing the partial inscription on the back. "This piece," explained David, "is part of a set that I designed many years ago when I was just starting. It wasn't an official collection of Montero's. It was something personal." He took the Polaris necklace from Jennifer's hand, who had approached and placed the 2 pendants side by side. "See, they fit together perfectly." Lily's eyes widened as she saw how the 2 halves formed a single star when joined. "So it really is my mom's necklace." "In a way, yes," David answered with a gentle smile. "I made only 5 of these necklaces a long time ago. They were special, different from anything I've ever created. Each one had a message on the back." When the 2 parts were joined, The complete inscription became visible. Believe in the impossible. Your mother had one of these necklaces, David continued. And now, for some reason that I still don't completely understand, the other half has found its way back to you. The store had fallen into complete silence. All present, employees and clients, observed the scene with a mixture of confusion and fascination. Patricia and Richard, still collecting their belongings, cast furtive glances in the direction of David and Lily. "Lily," David spoke softly, "I'd like to give you this necklace, not as charity but because I believe it belongs to you. It's the other half of your story." The girl's eyes filled with tears that she bravely tried to contain. "But it's very expensive." The lady said $8,000. "Some things don't have a price," David responded simply. "They have value." He took the two halves and, with the skill of someone who intimately knew the craft, joined them with a small click. The star was now complete, as if it had never been separated. "Luke," he called the marketing intern, who observed everything with wide eyes, "did you record this?" The young man nodded, discreetly raising his phone. "Yes, sir, from the beginning." "Great. Not for publicity," David quickly clarified, "but for documentation. We have some important changes to make in this company." Meanwhile, on social media, the buzz had already begun. One of the clients had filmed part of the scene with Patricia trying to expel Lily, and the video was beginning to circulate in WhatsApp groups. Hashtags like Montero Jewelry and Stargirl were timidly emerging, still without knowledge of the identity of the man who had interceded. David stood up and, with a voice that everyone in the store could clearly hear, made an announcement. "Attention! Please, I am David Montero, founder and CEO of Montero Jewelry. Starting today, I am personally taking over the administration of this unit, and we will implement significant changes in our service policy. Montero Jewelry was created to celebrate beauty and dignity for everyone. I apologize to any client who has felt disrespected in our stores, and I promise that we will work so that this never happens again." A murmur ran through the store, while smartphones were discreetly raised to record the moment. Patricia, who was about to leave, stopped with her hand on the doorknob, her face a mask of disbelief and contained anger. "As for you, Lily," David continued, turning to the girl, "I'd like to do more than just give you this necklace. If you allow, I'd like to help you find a safe place to live, and perhaps even discover what happened to your mother." Lily's eyes widened with genuine hope. "Do you think she might still be alive? That she might come back?" David hesitated, conscious of the responsibility of his words. "I can't promise that, Lily, but I can promise that we'll do everything possible to discover the truth, whatever it may be." Jennifer, who had observed everything with growing emotion, stepped forward. "Mr. Montero, if I may. My sister works at Hope House, an NGO that takes in children in vulnerable situations. They have an excellent program of psychological and educational support." David nodded, grateful for the suggestion. "Excellent idea, Jennifer. Could you make the contact immediately?" While Jennifer took the phone to call her sister, David noticed that Patricia and Richard were finally leaving the store. He head down, she with the rigidity of someone who refuses to demonstrate defeat. Now David addressed the remaining employees. "We have a lot of work ahead. Tomorrow we'll have a meeting with the entire team to discuss the changes we'll implement. For today the store is closed." He looked at his watch. "It's past business hours anyway." While the employees began to organize the store for closing, and the last clients withdrew, animatedly commenting on what they had witnessed, David sat again beside Lily, who contemplated the now complete star in her hands. "You know, Lily," he said in a conversational tone, "when I designed these necklaces, I was going through a very difficult time. It seemed that everything would go wrong. That's when I decided that no matter how impossible it seemed, I would believe in my dream." "And it worked," Lily commented, looking around the luxurious jewelry store. "It worked," David agreed. "But at some point, I forgot what really mattered. Perhaps you appeared today to remind me." Outside the store, the news was spreading like wildfire. The video of the initial confrontation had been shared thousands of times, and when David Montero's identity was revealed, the story gained even larger dimensions. Social media commentators were already discussing the powerful symbolism of that encounter. The billionaire who didn't forget his origins, the street girl with half of a star, the almost magical coincidence that united them. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll continue. 3 days had passed since the incident at the jewelry store. Hope House, located in a renovated mansion in the Lincoln Park neighborhood, had received Lily with the warm efficiency of those accustomed to welcoming children in delicate situations. Megan Sullivan, the director of the institution and Jennifer's sister, had ensured that the girl received special attention, albeit without privileges that would separate her from the other children. Lily now had a room shared with 2 other girls of similar ages, 3, guaranteed daily meals, and for the first time in years the feeling of security that every child deserves. The necklace with the star remained constantly around her neck, like a precious talisman. In his office on the 20th floor of a commercial building on Michigan Avenue, David Montero carefully studied a folder of documents. Beside him, Luke, the young marketing intern who had captured the entire scene at the jewelry store, now promoted to personal assistant, anxiously awaited. "So," David finally spoke, closing the folder, "we haven't found any official record of Helen Smith after 2022. "Exactly, sir," Luke confirmed. "She worked as a daily cleaner in various houses in Gold Coast and Lincoln Park, but completely disappeared 3 years ago. There are no records of passage through hospitals, no tax declaration, no bank movement. It's as if she had simply vanished." David drummed his fingers on the table, thoughtful. "And Lily's aunt, Judy Smith." Luke consulted his notes. "Judy Smith, 48 years old, Helen's older sister. Lives in a tenement in the Little Italy region. History of chemical dependency, several passages through rehabilitation clinics, all without completion of treatment. The social workers confirm that she isn't in a condition to adequately care for Lily, which explains why the girl spent so much time on the streets." "Any information about Lily's father?" "Nothing concrete, sir. Not even on the birth certificate is there mention of him." David sighed, rising to contemplate the view of the city through the panoramic window. Chicago stretched before him like a sea of concrete, where stories like Lily's multiplied by the thousands, most of them without the stroke of luck that the girl had had. "What intrigues me," David commented, more to himself than to Luke, "is the necklace. How did Helen Smith have one of the 5-star necklaces that I created?" "Any theory, sir?" David turned, a determined expression on his face. "Perhaps, but first I need to verify something. Cancel my afternoon appointments. I'm going to Hope House to visit Lily." Meanwhile, at Hope House, Lily was gradually adapting to the new routine. Sitting on a bench in the institution's internal garden, she observed the other children playing ball, preferring the quietude to social interaction that still seemed uncomfortable to her after so much time alone on the streets. Megan approached, sitting beside her with the naturalness of someone who respects others' space. "Don't you want to play with them?" she asked gently. Lily shook her head. "Not yet. I'm enjoying just being here." Megan smiled understandingly. "I understand. Sometimes we need to get used to security before venturing out again." Lily instinctively touched the necklace around her neck. "Do you think he'll really help find my mom?" "Mr. Montero, I believe so. He seems like a man of his word. But what if she doesn't want to be found?" The question came out almost as a whisper, revealing the fear that Lily rarely verbalized, that her mother hadn't simply disappeared, but had chosen to leave. Megan chose her words carefully. "Lily, sometimes adults face problems that make them take difficult decisions. That doesn't mean they don't love their children." Before Lily could respond, one of the educators appeared in the garden, announcing that David Montero had arrived and was waiting in the visiting room. Lily's heart accelerated. Since the incident at the jewelry store, he had maintained contact through intermediaries, but this would be the first time they would meet personally after that day. The visiting room at Hope House was a welcoming environment, with comfortable sofas and walls decorated with drawings made by the children. David, dressed more casually than on the day at the jewelry store, although still elegant, stood up when Lily entered, accompanied by Megan. "Hello, Lily," he greeted with a genuine smile. "How are you adapting?" "Well," she responded timidly, "the food is good and nobody sends me away when I'm tired." The simplicity of the response hit David like a painful reminder of how low the bar for being well was for a child who had lived on the streets. "I'm happy to hear that," he responded, indicating that they should sit. "Lily, I'd like to ask some questions about your mother, if that's all right with you." The girl nodded, instinctively touching the necklace. "Do you remember when and how your mother got this necklace? This part that stayed with you?" Lily frowned, concentrating on the memory. "She always had it, as far as I can remember. She said it was special, that one day she would tell me the whole story. But then she left," David completed softly, when Lily hesitated. "Yes. It was on a Sunday. She dressed me all pretty, did my hair, and said we were going to visit Aunt Judy just for a little while. She took a small backpack. When we arrived, she gave me the necklace, broke it in front of me and said, 'Keep your half, daughter. One day when you find the other part, you will know the way back home. Believe in the impossible.' And then she said she needed to resolve something and would return soon." Lily took a deep breath, controlling the emotion. "But she didn't come back." David exchanged a significant look with Megan, who remained attentive to the conversation. "And your Aunt Judy? She never explained what happened." Lily shook her head. "Aunt Judy sometimes didn't even remember that Mom had left. She was strange. After a while she began to forget to buy food to pay the rent. Then we had to move to that cramped place in Little Italy, and after that, well, I began to fend for myself." "I understand," David said, feeling a mixture of admiration for the girl's resilience and indignation at the system that had allowed her to fall through the cracks. "Lily, do you remember if your mother knew anyone named Charles?" Lily's eyes lit up with recognition. "Uncle Charlie. He used to visit us sometimes when we lived in the old apartment." "Was he a friend of your mother's?" "I think so. They talked a lot, and he always brought presents for me. He stopped coming a little before Mom left." David exchanged another look with Megan, who seemed to understand the importance of that information. "Lily," David continued, "would you be able to recognize this man, Uncle Charlie, if you saw a photo of him?" The girl nodded with confidence. "I think so. He had a funny smile, kind of crooked, and a tiny scar here." She pointed to her own chin. David took the phone from his pocket and, after a few touches, turned the screen to Lily. The photo showed a man of approximately 40 years, slightly asymmetrical smile and, as Lily had described, a small scar on his chin. "It's him!" Lily exclaimed, surprised. "It's Uncle Charlie. Do you know him?" David put the phone away, his expression a complex mixture of emotions. "Yes, Lily. Charles Mitchell was my partner in the early years of Montero Jewelry. We had a disagreement about 4 years ago, and he left the company." The revelation hung in the air like a puzzle piece that begins to find its place, although the complete picture was still far from visible. "What does this mean?" Megan asked, breaking the silence that had settled. "I'm not sure yet," David admitted. "But now I know there is a connection between Helen Smith and Montero Jewelry through Charles, and that might explain how she had one of the star necklaces." He turned to Lily. "Do you remember your mother ever mentioning Montero Jewelry or me?" Lily shook her head. "Not that I remember, but—" She hesitated. "But," David encouraged, "on the day she left, when we were going to Aunt Judy's house, we passed in front of one of your stores. It wasn't the same one where we met. It was a smaller one near Michigan Avenue." Mom stopped, looked at the window for a long time, and her eyes filled with tears. "I asked what was happening, but she just said that some dreams cost more than they seem." The enigmatic phrase seemed to deeply affect David, who abruptly stood up and walked to the window of the room, with his back to Lily and Megan, as if he needed a moment to process the information. When he turned again, his expression was composed, determined. "Lily, thank you very much for sharing these memories. They are more valuable than you imagine." He approached again, sitting in front of the girl. "I promise I will find out what happened to your mother. I can't guarantee that we'll find her, but I'll do everything in my power to discover the truth." "Why?" Lily's question was simple, direct, without circumlocution. Why are you doing all this for me? David smiled, a sad smile, laden with memories. Because a long time ago someone gave me a chance when I had nothing, and because... He hesitated as if deciding how much to reveal, and because your necklace and your mother's story may be connected to my own past in ways that I'm still trying to understand. Upon leaving Hope House, David was immersed in thoughts. In the car, he instructed the driver to take him not to the office, but to an address in the North Shore area. We're going to visit a person I haven't seen in a long time, he explained. To Luke, who accompanied him, someone who perhaps can help us understand this story. While the car navigated Chicago's chaotic traffic, David observed the city with new eyes. Each corner now seemed to hide stories like Lily's, invisible lives to the eyes of the elite who frequented his jewelry stores, people on the margins of a system that he, unconsciously, had helped to perpetuate. On his phone, notifications wouldn't stop arriving. The video of the incident at the jewelry store had gone viral with millions of views. Hashtags like June Stargirl and David Montero were among the most commented topics on social media. Journalists were desperately trying to get an exclusive interview with him or with Lily. The story had touched an exposed nerve in American society, the glaring inequality that marked the daily life of large cities. But for David, that had become much more than a media event or a marketing opportunity for his company. As new connections emerged, he began to suspect that fate, or whatever force had orchestrated the meeting with Lily, had more complex plans than a simple gesture of kindness in the face of discrimination. The mansion in North Shore, surrounded by an extensive, well-maintained garden and high walls, conveyed the same feeling of isolation that its owner had cultivated in recent years. Upon ringing the doorbell, David felt a strange mixture of nostalgia and apprehension. It had been almost 5 years since the last time he'd been there. A middle-aged housekeeper answered the door, recognizing him immediately. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Montero, how unexpected." She hesitated, clearly uncertain about how to proceed. "Good afternoon, Grace. Is Mrs. Montero in? I need to speak with her." Grace nodded, still uncomfortable. "Yes, she's in the music room. I don't know if she..." The phrase remained incomplete, but the message was clear. There was no certainty that Aurora would want to receive him. "Please, announce that I'm here. Say it's important." While they waited in the elegant entrance hall, Luke couldn't hide his curiosity. "Sir, who is this Aurora?" "Aurora Montero," David responded simply. "My mother." Before Luke could completely process the information, Grace returned, her face now more relaxed. "Mrs. Montero will receive you. Please follow me." The music room was a spacious and luminous room, dominated by a gleaming Steinway grand piano. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a privileged view of the back garden, where a small water fountain created a serene atmosphere. Seated in an armchair near the piano, an elegant woman of approximately 70 years awaited. Aurora Montero maintained the impeccable posture of someone who grew up frequenting the most refined social circles. Her hair, completely white, was arranged in a low and sophisticated bun. Upon seeing David, she didn't stand up, only indicated with a delicate gesture that they should approach. 5 years, David." Her voice was soft, but carried an undeniable firmness. 5 years for you to remember the way home." David signaled for Luke to wait near the door and walked to his mother, bending to kiss her cheek. "I didn't come to discuss the past, Mother." "Of course not," Aurora responded with a slight ironic smile. "You never want to discuss the past. You only appear when you need something." She raised an eyebrow, studying her son with attention. "I saw you on television, the girl with the necklace. Quite theatrical, I must say." David ignored the provocation. "That's what I came to talk about the star necklace and about Charles." The simple mention of the name seemed to subtly alter the atmosphere of the room. Aurora adjusted herself in her armchair, her expression now more cautious. "Charles Mitchell is not a subject I would like to revisit. Even so, we need to, because there is a 10-year-old girl whose future may depend on it." Aurora sighed, resigned. "Grace, She called the housekeeper, who remained discreetly near the door. "Bring tea for us, please, and cookies for the young man." She indicated Luke with a gracious gesture. When they were relatively alone, Aurora turned to her son. "What exactly do you want to know about Charles?" "I want to understand what happened after he left the company, and I want to know if you have knowledge of a woman named Helen Smith." Aurora contemplated the garden for a few moments before responding. "Helen Smith," she repeated, as if testing the sound of the name. "Yes, I know that name." David's heart accelerated. "How? From where?" "She was Charles's employee. I don't know exactly what her function was. Perhaps secretary or personal assistant. I remember him mentioning her a few times when he still came to visit me." "Charles visited you after he left Montero?" The surprise was evident in David's voice. Aurora nodded calmly. "Yes, for a few months. You were so busy burning bridges that you didn't even notice, I suppose." The sharp response was typical of Aurora, but David opted not to deviate from the main subject. "What did he say about Helen?" "Not much, just that she was an intelligent young woman who was helping him with a new project. He mentioned once that she had a small daughter." Aurora paused, her eyes fixed on David's. "Why this sudden interest, son? What does this woman have to do with the girl with the necklace?" "Lily, the girl from the jewelry store, is Helen Smith's daughter, and she has half of a star necklace, one of the 5 that I created even before Montero Jewelry officially existed." The information seemed to genuinely surprise Aurora. "That is peculiar indeed." "Mother," David leaned forward, his voice now lower and more intense. "I need you to tell me the truth. What happened to Charles after he left the company? What was this new project?" Aurora sighed deeply, like someone finally surrendering to a truth long avoided. "Charles was hurt, David. Deeply hurt by the way you pushed him away from the company he helped build." "He was embezzling funds, Mother. We had proof." "Did you?" Aurora questioned with a penetrating look. "Or was that what Roger made you believe?" The mention of Roger Vance, current financial director of Montero Jewelry, made David hesitate. "What are you insinuating?" "I'm not insinuating anything. I'm clearly saying that you were manipulated. Charles never diverted a single penny. He was investigating irregularities in the international contracts, and that threatened certain interests." The revelation fell like a bomb. David felt the ground move under his feet, memories and events of the last years reorganizing under a new light. "Why did you never tell me this before?" "Because you didn't ask," Aurora responded simply. "You had already decided that Charles was guilty and that I was on the wrong side of the story for defending a thief, remember? Those were your exact words the last time you were in this house." The silence that followed was interrupted by Grace's arrival with the tea. When the housekeeper withdrew again, David resumed the conversation, now with a renewed urgency. "Mother, I need to find Charles, and I need to know what happened to Helen Smith. Charles has been in Europe since he left the company, Barcelona, I believe. As for Helen..." Aurora hesitated, as if weighing the impact of her next words. "The last time I heard about her was about 3 years ago, when Charles called me, quite disturbed. He said she had disappeared and that he was worried." "Disappeared how?" "He didn't go into details. He just mentioned that she was helping him gather documentation about something important, and that he feared they had found her. He didn't specify who they would be." David exchanged a significant look with Luke, who observed the conversation in silence. "That coincides with the time when Helen left Lily with her aunt and never returned." Aurora drummed her fingers on the center table, a habit she shared with her son when she was immersed in thoughts. "There's something else you should perhaps know," she finally said. "One of Charles's last comments about Helen was that she had found something in the Colombian mines that could change everything." "Colombian mines?" David frowned. "What mines?" "The same ones that Montero supposedly uses to extract emeralds for exclusive collections. Except that, according to Charles, something very different was happening there. David's mind was working at 1,000 miles per hour. The Colombian mines were a project managed directly by Roger, with minimal supervision from other departments. It had always been an operation shrouded in secrecy, justified by the need for protection against competitors. Mother, are you suggesting that Montero Jewelry, my company, is involved in illicit activities? This is an extremely serious accusation. Aurora raised an eyebrow, imperturbable. I'm not suggesting anything, David. I'm just reporting what Charles told me. It's up to you to decide what to do with that information. On the way back to the city center, David remained silent for long minutes, processing everything he had discovered. Luke, respecting his contemplative state, only occasionally checked messages on his phone. Sir, Luke finally spoke, there's an important update about Lily's case. The social worker from Hope House managed to contact Judy Smith, the aunt. Apparently she's been sober for a few weeks and asking to see her niece. Arrange a meeting, David promptly decided, but with adequate supervision. And I want to be present. It's already scheduled for tomorrow morning at Hope House. Another matter, Roger Vance has been trying to speak with you insistently. He said it's urgent, related to the media situation. David smiled without humor. I bet it is. Tell him I'll be unavailable for the next few days. And about the meeting with the Asian investors? It's scheduled for the day after tomorrow. Cancel. Or better, ask Sandra to take over. She's more than prepared. David looked out the window, observing the city that was gradually darkening. Our priorities have changed, Luke. From now on, I only have one goal: to discover what happened to Helen Smith and expose any illicit activity within my own company, no matter who is involved. The next morning, Hope House was unusually busy. The meeting between Lily and her Aunt Judy had been carefully prepared with the presence of Megan, a psychologist from the institution, and David himself. Judy Smith, a woman in her 40s whose face carried the marks of a difficult life, nervously awaited in the visiting room. She wore simple but clean clothes, and there was an evident effort in her appearance that signaled the importance she attributed to that moment. When Lily entered the room, there was an instant of hesitation on both parts. Then, with a contained sob, Judy opened her arms, and Lily ran to the embrace, the repressed emotions of years of separation and abandonment finally finding an escape valve. "Forgive me, child," Judy whispered between tears. "Forgive me for not being strong enough." David observed the scene with a mixture of emotions. On one hand, he was genuinely happy for Lily to reconnect with a family bond. On the other, the investigator in him was alert for any information that Judy could provide about Helen's disappearance. When the initial emotions calmed down, everyone sat. Lily remained beside her aunt, as if fearing she might disappear again if she lost physical contact. "Miss Smith," David began gently, "we understand that this is a delicate moment, but there are some questions we need to ask about your sister." "Helen," Judy nodded, wiping away tears. "I saw the news about Lily and the necklace. I didn't believe it at first. It seemed like something from a movie. Do you have any idea what happened to Helen on the day she left Lily with you?" Judy took a deep breath, like someone preparing to face painful memories. Helen was different that day. Nervous, looking over her shoulder all the time. She said she needed to resolve a problem, that it was too dangerous to take Lily along. She said she would return in a few days, a week at most. Did she mention what this problem was or why it would be dangerous? Not directly, but a few weeks earlier she had told me that she discovered something bad at her work, something about false stones or stones that weren't what they seemed. I don't know, I didn't understand it well at the time, and afterward— Judy lowered her eyes, ashamed. "Afterward I fell completely into addiction. They were years lost in the fog, you know. When I finally came to my senses, Lily had already learned to fend for herself, and Helen had never given any news." David exchanged a significant look with Megan. "False stones, are you sure that's what she said?" "More or less. Something about how they were deceiving everyone, selling things that weren't what they seemed. Helen was always the intelligent one in the family, you know. She finished high school, took distance courses. I was always the problematic one." "And Uncle Charlie?" Lily suddenly asked. "Did Mum talk with him about this?" Judy seemed surprised by the question. "Charles? That guy in a suit who came sometimes? Yes, they talked a lot. It was he who arranged the job for Helen, by the way, but after a while he stopped appearing too. "Do you remember when was the last time you saw Charles?" David asked. "Shortly. Before Helen disappeared, they had an argument. I heard Helen say that she didn't want to participate anymore, that it was getting too dangerous. He responded that it was too late to turn back, that they already knew about her." A chill ran down David's spine. Each new piece of information seemed to confirm his suspicions that something very serious was happening behind the scenes of his own company. "One last question, Mrs. Smith. Did Helen ever mention someone named Roger Vance?" Judy frowned, making a visible effort to remember. "I'm not sure, but she talked about a boss, someone powerful who was behind everything. It could be that name, I don't remember." When the visit ended, with the promise that Judy could visit Lily regularly while maintaining her sobriety, David turned to Luke with renewed determination. "Contact Charles Mitchell immediately. Use all available resources. We need to talk to him." "And if he doesn't want to talk to us?" Luke questioned. "From what I understood, he must not have good memories of you." David instinctively touched the star-shaped necklace that he now carried with him, an exact replica of the one he had given to Lily, one of the 5 originals that he himself had created so many years ago. "Tell him I know about the Colombian mines, and that I have the other half of the star." A week passed since the meeting with Judy Smith. The search for Charles Mitchell had intensified, but David's former partner seemed to have become a ghost. The number that Aurora had provided no longer worked, and the address in Barcelona had been unoccupied for at least a year, according to the private investigator hired by Luke. Meanwhile, the Montero jewelry empire faced its own storm. Lily's story had captured the public's imagination, but also attracted unwanted attention to the company's internal practices. Investigative reports were beginning to question the origins of the precious stones used in the exclusive collections, and an online publication had raised suspicions about the Colombian operations. Roger Vance, financial director and responsible for international operations, finally got a meeting with David after days of insistence. Seated in the main office of Montero Jewelry, he maintained an appearance of calm, but his fingers drumming on the folder of documents betrayed his nervousness. "David, we need to manage this crisis immediately. The shares fell 12% last week, and the investors are asking questions that we cannot answer." David observed his financial director with new eyes. Roger, at 55, had been a pillar of the company for more than a decade. His apparent competence and dedication had never been questioned, until now. "What kind of questions, exactly?" David inquired, maintaining a neutral tone. Roger adjusted his tie, visibly uncomfortable. "About our supply chain, mainly. That journalist from the Tribune, Paul Anderson, is investigating our Colombian connections. I suggest that our legal team contact him and—" "No," David interrupted him firmly. "We're not going to intimidate journalists, Roger. We're going to instead talk about what's really happening in the Colombian mines." Roger's face paled. "I don't understand what you mean." "I think you understand perfectly." David opened a drawer and removed a folder, placing it on the table. "Complete documentation of our official operations in Colombia. Curiously, when I asked our new compliance director to verify in loco, he discovered that the registered address for our mining operation doesn't exist. There must be some administrative error, a confusion in the records." "There is no confusion at all." "Roger." David's voice now carried a hardness rarely demonstrated. "What there is an elaborate scheme of money laundering and possibly trafficking of uncertified stones, and I have reasons to believe that you are at the center of all this." Roger abruptly stood up, a mixture of indignation and fear on his face. "This is absurd. I worked my whole life to build this company with you. How can you accuse me like this? The same way you accused Charles 4 years ago, fabricating evidence, manipulating my trust." David also rose, his presence now dominating the room. "And there's more, Helen Smith. Does the name mean anything to you?" The change in Roger's expression was subtle, but revealing. A flash of recognition, quickly masked by forced confusion. "I don't know who you're talking about." "Helen Smith worked for Charles. She was helping him gather evidence against you. When she disappeared 3 years ago, leaving a 7-year-old daughter behind. I'd like to know what happened to her, Roger." "This is ridiculous." Roger took his folder, preparing to leave. "I'm not going to stay here listening to unfounded accusations. Talk to my lawyers." "I'm talking to the responsible person," David insisted, his voice now dangerously calm. "And I suggest that you start talking too, before the federal police becomes officially involved. I've already delivered part of the documentation we have, but I'm holding the information that directly implicates you, for now." The silence that followed was charged with tension. Roger seemed to calculate his options, fear gradually overcoming, indignation in his gaze. "I don't know what happened to that woman," he finally said, his voice low. "She was poking around where she shouldn't, but I swear I had nothing to do with her disappearance." "But you knew she existed. You knew she worked with Charles." Roger sighed, defeated. "Yes, I knew. Charles hired her when he began to suspect the Colombian operations. She was intelligent, had technical knowledge about precious stones. She started as a simple cleaner in his house, but he discovered that she was taking online gemology courses. And when Charles was removed from the company thanks to your false accusations, Helen continued investigating on her own. Apparently." Roger sat again, suddenly seeming aged. "I received information that she was collecting documents, taking photos at the facilities in Colombia. I gave orders for her to be removed, just that." "Removed how?" "Fired, just that, I swear." Roger's voice trembled slightly. "When I learned that she had disappeared, I was as surprised as anyone. I thought that perhaps she had fled or—" The door to the office suddenly opened, interrupting the conversation. Luke entered hurriedly, his face illuminated by excitement. "Mr. Montero, we found Charles Mitchell. He just arrived in the United States and is on his way to Hope House right now." David felt his heart accelerate. How? Why? He saw the news about Lily on international social networks. He recognized the necklace and contacted Megan directly. He said he has crucial information about Helen. David turned to Roger, who seemed to have completely lost his composure. "Our conversation isn't over. You'll come with me now." When David, accompanied by Luke and a visibly dejected Roger, arrived at Hope House, an unexpected scene awaited him. In the internal garden, seated on a bench beside Lily, was Charles Mitchell. The years had added some silver strands to his dark hair, and lines of worry marked his face, but the gentle smile was the same that David remembered, from the times when they were friends and partners. Lily was animatedly conversing with him, showing the now complete necklace around her neck. Upon seeing David, Charles stood up, his expression instantly becoming serious. "David," he greeted with a nod. Then his gaze fixed on Roger, and his eyes narrowed. "I see you brought company." "Charles," David extended his hand, uncertain if the gesture would be returned. "Thank you for coming." After a moment of hesitation, Charles shook the offered hand. "I didn't come for you, I came for Lily, and for Helen." "Then you know where she is?" Lily's hopeful voice broke the tension between the men. Charles turned to the girl, his face softening. "Not exactly, Lily, but I brought information that can help us find her." Megan approached, suggesting that they continue the conversation in a private room. "Lily, dear, why don't you go with Jennifer for now? The adults need to talk about some complicated matters." Reluctantly, Lily agreed, not without first casting a distrustful look at Roger, as if instinctively perceiving that he was somehow linked to her mother's disappearance. In the meeting room at Hope House, Charles removed a flash drive from the folder he carried. "Everything is here," he explained, placing the device on the table. "All the evidence that Helen and I collected about Roger's scheme, not just money laundering, but something much worse. The Colombian mines are a front to introduce conflict diamonds from Africa into the market." Roger, who until then had maintained a tense silence, protested, "This is absurd. There's no way to prove—" "Yes, there is," Charles interrupted him, firmly. "Helen got samples, documentation, photos. She was meticulous, Roger, much smarter than you ever gave her credit for." David connected the flash drive to the laptop that Megan had made available. The screen filled with documents, photographs, spreadsheets, meticulously organized evidence that detailed a complex scheme involving not just Montero jewelry, but other businessmen and even political figures. "My God," David murmured, going through the files. "This is much bigger than we imagined, and much more dangerous," Charles confirmed. "That's why Helen disappeared. When she realized the extent of the scheme and the people involved, she feared for her safety and that of Lily." "So she's alive?" David's question echoed the hope that all silently nurtured. Charles hesitated before responding. "I believe so. She entered an informal protection program that I organized with some international contacts, changed her identity, her appearance, left the United States." "But why abandon her own daughter?" Megan questioned, verbalizing the question. That hung in the air. "It was the hardest decision of her life," Charles explained, his voice choked with emotion. "Helen knew that if she took Lily, both would be easily tracked. Leaving her with Judy, she thought she would be protecting her daughter. The plan was to fetch Lily as soon as it was safe. She didn't imagine that Judy would relapse into addiction, that Lily would end up practically on the streets." David felt a mixture of emotions, relief to know that Helen was probably alive, anger at the unnecessary suffering of Lily, and a renewed determination to correct the mistakes committed, including his own. "Where is she now, Charles?" "I don't know exactly. Our communication system was purposely limited, but—" He hesitated, looking significantly at Roger. "With this man detained and the scheme exposed, I believe it's safe for her to return." Roger, realizing he was completely cornered, collapsed in the chair. "I never wanted anyone to get hurt," he murmured, more to himself than to the others. "It was just business." "Business that finances wars, Roger," David responded coldly. "Business that destroys lives, like Helen's and Lily's." The door to the room suddenly opened, and Lily entered, ignoring the protests of Jennifer, who followed her. "I want to know about my mom," she demanded, determination shining in her young eyes. "I have the right to know." Charles approached, her kneeling to be at the height of her eyes. "Your mother is alive, Lily, and she never ever wanted to abandon you. She thought about you every day, kept every photo, every drawing that you made before you separated." "How do you know?" Lily asked, distrustful but hopeful. "Because she sent me messages whenever she could. And in each one of them, she asked, about you." Charles removed from his pocket a small device, similar to an ultra-compact cell phone. "This is a secure communicator. If your mother follows the protocol that we established, she'll check a certain channel tonight, as she does every week." Lily looked at the device as if it were a magical object. "Can we talk to her?" "We can send a message, and if everything goes well, perhaps in a few days she can return." The hope that illuminated Lily's face was like the sunrise after a long night. David felt his eyes water, surprised by his own emotion. That same night, while Roger gave a formal statement to the authorities and the conflict diamond scheme began to be dismantled, a small group gathered at Hope House. David, Charles, Megan, Judy, now officially participating in a rehabilitation program, and of course, Lily, anxiously awaited around the secure communicator. At 9 p.m. sharp, the device emitted a soft beep. Charles typed a series of codes and then handed the device to Lily. "Write something that only you and your mother would know," he gently instructed. "Something that confirms for her that it's really you." Lily thought for a moment, then carefully typed, "Star that guides home. Believe in the impossible." The response took only a few seconds but seemed like an eternity for all present. "My little Lily, Mommy is coming home." 3 days later, at a small private airport on the outskirts of Chicago, a private jet discreetly landed. Security had been reinforced, with federal agents ensuring that no vestige of the scheme that Helen had dismantled could threaten her again. Lily waited on the runway, firmly holding the star necklace with one hand and David's hand with the other. When the door of the aircraft opened and a woman with shorter and now blonde hair appeared at the top of the stairs, there was no need for introductions. "Mommy." Lily's cry echoed across the asphalt as she ran toward the mother she hadn't seen for 3 years. Helen Smith, now using the name Eleanor Sanders, descended the stairs in a hurry, kneeling to receive her daughter in a desperate embrace. Tears ran freely down the faces of both, while they clung to each other as if they feared being separated again. "Forgive me, my love," Helen whispered between sobs. "Forgive me for having left." "You came back," Lily responded simply, with the wisdom of a child who had faced more difficulties than many adults. "You promised you would return when I found the other half of the star." Helen raised her eyes, still embracing her daughter, and her gaze met David's, who observed the scene from a respectful distance. With Lily still in her arms, she stood up and walked to him. "Thank you," she said simply, "for taking care of her, for believing." David shook his head. "I'm the one who should thank you, for helping me rediscover what really matters." A month later, Montero Jewelry had undergone a complete transformation. With Roger and his accomplices removed and facing criminal proceedings, David implemented a policy of total transparency in the supply chain. Charles was invited to return as Director of Ethics and Compliance, ensuring that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. Helen, now officially working as a gemology consultant for the company, had established herself with Lily in a comfortable apartment. Judy, continuing her treatment, visited them regularly, slowly building a healthy family relationship that none of them had ever experienced. At the reopening of the Oak Avenue store, now with a new philosophy of inclusion and respect, David invited Lily to cut the opening ribbon. The girl, dressed in a simple but elegant blue dress, smiled timidly for the cameras, the star necklace shining around her neck. "This necklace," David explained to the journalists present, "inspired a new collection that will launch today, Believe. Part of the profits will be destined to Hope House and other programs that support children in vulnerable situations." Jennifer, now promoted to store manager, organized the team with gentleness and efficiency, a marked contrast to Patricia's authoritarian style. When the ceremony ended and the store was opened to the public, something remarkable happened. Among the first clients were people of all social classes, ages, and styles, a diversity never before seen in that traditionally exclusive space. David observed with satisfaction, while salespeople attended with the same respect and attention, both executives in suits and workers in simple clothes, merely curious to see the interior of the famous jewelry store that had become a symbol of a new way of doing business. "It seems we've succeeded," commented Charles, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne, offering one to David. "Succeeded in what?" "Believing in the impossible," Charles responded with a smile, indicating with a gesture the transformed environment around them. "Who would have thought that one day we would see Montero Jewelry as a symbol of inclusion?" David laughed, raising his glass in a silent toast. His gaze found Helen and Lily on the other side of the salon, mother and daughter together admiring a display, not as potential clients, but as part of the Montero family that now extended far beyond blood ties. The star necklace that Lily wore caught a ray of light, shining intensely for a moment, as if wanting to remind everyone that sometimes, in the most unlikely